Welcome to the Parental podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each episode, we'll be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us gems from their parenthood journey. Keep tuning in to learn with us as we figure it out together.
Hello and welcome to the Parental podcast. My name is June and I'm your host for this episode. Today we are diving into a feeling most parents know all too well: parental guilt. Whether it's the pressure to be present, to provide, or to get it right every time, guilt has somehow a way of showing up in the everyday moments of parenting, and dads probably feel it too, perhaps in ways where they may not voice it out as openly. With us today on the podcast is Mark Lim, Director and Counsellor at the Social Factor, a consultancy and trauma informed counselling agency. Mark, it's really great to have you back on the podcast. Could you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, June. Yeah, it's really great to be back here. I've always loved the work that Focus does, and it's very powerful and precious. Thanks for doing the good work that you do. Yeah. My name is Mark. First and foremost, I'm a parent, okay, of 2 plus 1 children. That means that I have 2 forever children and 1 foster kid. So that's 2 teenagers and 1 2-year-old toddler. Yeah, so my company, The Social Factor, we do work in the area of special needs, in the area of counseling. And recently I set up a new Purposeful Parent Academy, coach parents who have issues with parenting.
Wow, that's really meaningful work. Thanks for sharing about your work and also your family. On this topic of parental guilt, right? Yeah, I wonder if the mere mention of the word guilt sort of arouses some emotions within you. But perhaps when you hear of these terms, what's the first situation or moment that comes to mind for you?
I'm a counselor, right? So whenever I think about guilt, I always think about shame. And guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am something wrong. So in this sense, parental guilt gives me the perspective that as a parent, I did something wrong. So it's this whole idea about not doing enough for my children, right? So parental guilt in this sense refers to, as a dad, in many times it just means that I may not be providing enough for the family, or I may not be earning enough for the family, or maybe I don't do enough to get food on the table. That's one aspect of it. On the other extreme about it is also that if I work very hard, and I may be bringing in the bacon, but on the other hand, I may be spending too little time with my kids, and that could also make me feel guilty for not spending enough quality time with them.
It really relates to the roles of a father and also some of the expectations that we as parents may place on ourselves. Do you feel that fathers experience this guilt differently from moms? What's the similarity or what's the difference?
I like that you use the word expectations, and that is really how I would say that's at the root of why we feel guilt. Why as parents we feel guilt. We expect a lot from ourselves, and it makes us feel guilty when we're not able to meet up to our expectations. That's probably the root of the parental guilt. So you're talking about the difference between so-called mom guilt and dad guilt. So what I'll say is that for my wife, to speak for her, she may feel guilty when, let's say, the kids don't have enough food to eat, or don't sleep enough, or like they to do their homework or their assignments without adequate resources and things like that. So is that provision, the physical provision. For dad guilt, I guess a lot of it stems from the work part. I mentioned briefly about that earlier on, about either not having enough finances to provide for the family, or in the sense of not spending enough time, or just being busy when my kids approach me and then I may not be able to tend to them at that point in time.
So it sounds like these expectations, it relates quite a bit with maybe what perhaps society says a mom should do well, as well as what a dad should do well, right? And then that kind of coincides with the guilt that both dads and moms experience, right? They're both the same guilt. We feel guilty at not doing enough, not providing enough, but just in slightly differing aspects. So that's what I'm hearing. Could you share with us any personal anecdotes?
Thanks for sharing what you did, because the whole idea about gender roles and expectations, I think that comes true as well. And that really does have that effect on us, either as fathers or as mothers. Yeah, personal anecdotes. Well, I would say that there have been quite a few times when I have busy rushing a particular document, either a proposal or bid, a tender, and those involving time crunch. At that point in time, my kids may require my help in a particular moment, and I feel very, very bad when I'm not able to tend to them. And it's a real sense of, I wish I could do something to help them in their area of need or the particular area of need for attention, but I'm not able to because of my conflicting work demands that I need to have. So that's very real for me.
In such a case, right, what do you suggest? I guess many dads may experience it as well, especially now with more parents, working from home some of the time. So sometimes the kids may see us physically around, but, depending on their age and maturity, may or may not understand, like, why isn't daddy choosing to spend that time with me, right? So I think what you shared earlier is very relatable. What would be some helpful ways, both to help the child understand our situation, as well as what are some ways we can alleviate that sense of guilt?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because it's true. I mean, I do work from home quite a bit of my time. And one interesting question is like, especially when you talk about screen time, kids says, how come daddy you're always on the screen? Okay.
Oh dear.
I do that because of work, right? So but it helps. Then I will say, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'll show them exactly what I'm doing. And it does help for them to understand that daddy is not just playing computer games on the screen, which I do. Okay. But daddy is actually doing work that will hopefully get them put on the table. Right? So that's help them to understand a little bit about what we do as fathers and why are we doing what we're doing. The purpose of the end of the day is for the sake of the family. The other thing is to mention is that when that happens and my kid needs help in a particular, let's say, to an assignment or a particular task, what I would say then is, sorry, son, I am doing this particular important work now. I know what you're saying. What you need me is important. Can you just give me 5 minutes or give me 10 minutes? Let me complete this particular task. After that, I will come to attend to your needs or help you to answer your question or something along those lines. So I give them a very specific time. I won't just say, okay, sorry, don't bother me now. Okay. But I'll say, yeah, daddy's busy. Just give me 5 minutes or just give me 10 minutes. Just let me complete this particular document that I need to finish. I will get to you as soon as I can. I love you, but I just really have to do this work right now. Something along those lines. Yeah.
So they need to receive that sense of assurance from you, right? That though you're not available now, it doesn't mean that will last forever, right? You give them a kind of a time frame to look forward to. Once you're done with the task, you can then help them with whatever they were requesting for. So I guess as our children grow older, they will also grow in their awareness and empathy towards us. Yeah.
That's definitely true. Yeah, I mean, you talk about the assurance part, and I think that's really true. I mean, we need to assure them that we love them. And I believe at the end of the day, it's about connection and communication. Connecting with them, just holding their hands or just walking alongside with them, and at the same time communicating to them how important they are. And interestingly enough, you talk about empathy. My 13-year-old son recently came to me, oh, Daddy, what are you doing? What work are you doing? Oh, why are you doing this particular PowerPoint slide? Oh, what's that for? That kind of stuff. Oh, you're doing a video for marketing. What's that for? Yeah. So they're quite interested. I set up a parent coaching academy, right, recently. So my sons have been roped into also video. So I recently came back from a trip to Australia and we did some filming there. Okay, just very casual filming, either in the forest area or near the sea. And my sons were the videographers. So in the sense they know what work I'm doing, they can actually see it when I play back the videos for them, and they were quite happy that they were part of the process, being involved in my work. Yeah, I think kids like being involved in parents' lives, and that it's not their dad or their mom is just doing something alien to them, but dad and mom is doing something and I can relate to them. I think we're all talking about being relatable to each other, because when we're able to connect and relate to each other, I think that actually fuels a very strong parent-child relationship.
So I'm hearing that this connection piece is really important, especially when it comes to the things that take us away from the family, right? The things that take up our time. And for many of us, it is work. It is the bread and butter, whatever work that we do and we get to enjoy. This slightly sharing, our work experiences with them. What is our job about? What are we busy with? Can actually help them to understand the reasons why we may sometimes be unavailable as well, which then relates back to this whole expectation that you started us off with, right? The expectation of wanting to spend time with the family and wanting to be available to our kids especially like when they are young.
I just wanted to add on to that as well, because this morning I was at a parenting workshop, and one of the parents actually talked about this thing about feeling guilty because when the child did something inadequate, they would raise their voice or start scolding them, and they felt guilty for losing it with their children. I think that's one aspect of parent guilt, which is actually very, very real. So they asked me what to do in such a situation. So I was just sharing with them that when a child does something wrong, I mean, yes, it's definitely important to correct. Yeah. But before you correct, you still need to connect. I feel that connection is still the ultimate thing. So I did share with them that, yeah, my 2-year-old, well, she's a toddler and always up to the mischief. Sometimes I would call her Dennis the Menace in a sense. So her recent thing she's getting in trouble with toilet paper, unrolling the entire stack of toilet paper. And it's quite a nightmare. Come back and see the entire floor with toilet papers. Of course, we were upset with her. So, but we wanted to tell her that that's wrong. So I just said, child, with a very stern voice, okay, that's not acceptable, right? But at the same time, I went to hold her hand and I said, what you did is not acceptable. Daddy loves you. I love you no matter what, okay? You must not do this again, right? And she did apologize. She said sorry. And after that, what I did was the reparative work of getting her to fold up the toilet paper again. Because 2-year-olds may not be so skilled psychomotor-wise in folding toilet paper. So every half of toilet paper, that piece that she folded, I would fold 5 pieces. But that's fine, okay? It's a parent and child working together to repair the situation in that sense. And at the end of the day, I'll say, good job. Well done. Thank you for listening to Daddy and thank you for obeying me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing such a heartwarming story. I'm hearing that this connection is really important and it needs to happen before we engage in any correction of our children's behavior. And thanks for also bringing that very common scenario where, as parents, sometimes we lose our temper, we may yell at the kids. However, the important thing is actually knowing how to restore the relationship, to restore the sense of hurt that you may have caused each other, and then thereby release ourselves in a sense from carrying this guilt around into the next day or into the next week and kind of ruminating on it, right? Is this how you would personally deal with guilt as well?
Yeah, I think what you said is very important. It's important not to ruminate on it so much that we bring it over to the next day and it affects the relationship in a long-term manner. I think what you said is really key. I mean, we do need to think about it. Why do we feel the way we do? And acknowledge that we are only human, right? Okay. There's no perfect parent, okay? But yeah, the whole idea about us being imperfect parents, and yes, may have done something wrong, but we do then need to apologize if we feel that it's something that we have done wrong, like unduly raising our voices or, to our children, and asking our children for forgiveness as well. I think, in a sense, is to release grace to each other, and for children to realize also their dads or their moms actually can make mistakes. And if the dads and their moms can make mistakes and ask for forgiveness, they too can do so as children. In many ways, it's also modeling the whole idea about releasing grace and talking about forgiveness. So I think it's important. At the end of the day, it's about restoration of relationships.
Yeah, I mean, as parents, we definitely, make many mistakes along the way. And it's so important to just show ourselves grace as well. And also, like you said, model it to our children. Have them also realize that, even though daddy and mommy are so big, so strong, yet they also have their moments of weakness, right? And they are able to acknowledge even when they make mistakes.
The other thing you mentioned was the whole aspect about carrying the weight of the guilt on you. And that's very, very crippling. In my interaction with a number of my clients as a counselor, a number of them hold that guilt with them, either as a child being affected by what they did to their parents, and a number of them brought on their guilt to their own roles as parents, calling it some sort of a transferring that entire aspect of guilt to their children. So it can be very complicated and it's very, very layered as counselors who, as a counselor, I have to remove all the layers and peel open the many layers of the onion, and it's very, very painful. So you're right. I mean, I think it's important to resolve issues as much as we can and identify the various instances where we feel guilty, right, and address these issues before they actually get compounded into something bigger and cripple us from achieving that strong parent-child bond.
Yeah, I think that's such an important and powerful point that you raised, Mark. So it's not just the moment-to-moment guilt that may happen on a day-to-day basis. It seems to be a very frequently recurring thing for a parent. then perhaps there could be deeper issues, right? Unresolved guilt or unforgiveness from our past that we may still be holding on to or is subconsciously like affecting us, right, in our relationships currently. Then maybe it's good time to actually try to face it lah. Try to work through them with perhaps a counselor or someone who's trained in this area. What would you say to a parent who feels like I really have failed? Things are so difficult. It seems like it is beyond repair. Yeah, this deep feeling of I have failed as a parent. How would you help or advise this parent to release that sense of guilt, right? And to show forgiveness to the self?
I think this takes on a couple of steps kind of a thing. I think the first thing I would ask the parent, why are you feeling this way? Why do you feel that you are the cause of this particular incident? In a sense, why do you blame yourself? So there's a thinking part about it. And then I will help to process with the parent if these thoughts are actually sound or they might be illogical or they could be fallacious. So they could be founded on certain irrational perspectives or irrational beliefs. So the cognitive part about it. Secondly, I would say that it's actually not your fault. When we think that things are our fault, we are beholden to them and they stick on to us for many, many years, sometimes the rest of our lives. But when someone releases it to you to say that it's not your fault, it's a very powerful release. So oftentimes I would address the particular situation and say that what this parent says, so you are saying that you feel bad that your child is behaving this way or your child is quote unquote naughty. You feel it's your fault. I'll say to you that it's not your fault. Children do things because they do things. Kids are kids. Kids are imperfect just like parents are. And when kids make mistakes, it's not the parents' fault, okay? It's not your fault that your kid is behaving in the way that you do. It's not your fault that your kid is stealing or is lying or is making a scene in front of the principal's office, right? It's not your fault. Very powerful words to release to parents to let them know that they should not hold themselves responsible for every quote-unquote wrong thing that the child does.
Wow, that's really powerful. Thank you, Mark. And I guess at the heart of it all is we can all learn to be a little bit more compassionate on ourselves, right? Somehow or other, we tend to be extremely critical, extremely harsh to ourselves as well. But we really need to learn to show a bit of compassion to ourselves, that we are still growing on this journey, right, of learning to parent our children, learning to be the parent that we really want to be, right? And part of this is also showing that same grace to ourselves.
You're right. Self-criticism actually is a very deep reason for guilt. When you feel guilty, a lot of it is self-criticism. And that's why self-compassion, what you said, is really, really crucial. Just as we parent our children, sometimes we may need to reparent ourselves. That's a different topic altogether. But talking about reparenting our past hurts and pains and childhood issues and all, I'm not going to do that at this point in time, but there's a lot of things to talk about. But yes.
It is. But it's also a very important topic. So thanks so much for raising it. And thank you for sharing all your insights on guilt and managing guilt better as parents. I think you've included some helpful handles for parents to sort of be kind to ourselves, to know that different expectations that we place on ourselves, and also to continue trying, right, as we make reparation, as we make repairs, as and when we fall and make mistakes with our kids. So thank you so much. As we come to the end of our conversation, is there any last words of encouragement you'd like to share with the parents tuning in?
Yeah, if you're a parent listening into this podcast, I'll just say, just keep doing what you've been doing. Don't let anyone tell you that you are a bad father or a bad mother, because you're not. You're probably just trying to do things the best you can. And that's really good enough. Your kids know it, and that's good enough.
Thank you so much. I'm sure many parents out there will be encouraged by that. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you, June, as always.
For more parenting resources, do visit our website at family.org.sg. And that's all we have for today. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Do remember to keep tuning in to the Parental podcast to learn and grow in your parenting journey.